This European budget we are going to discuss must express a political project of coherence, efficiency and convergence. France is ready to increase its contribution to the EU, but to do so, we must reassess the budget.
I welcome the return of France among us, and I wanted to say that your election has given new hopes to Europe.
Our editor-at-large, Craig Copetas, joins us from Paris now for more. Hello, Craig. Great to see you. Look, Macron, he's the darling of Europe right now, isn't he? How long's that going to last, though?
Well, as the Four Aces sang, you know, love is a many-splendored thing. It's the April rose that only grows in the early spring. But let's pull back a little bit from the love song. Macron is calling the future Europeans a generation of sleepwalkers, and he's worried about this. And why he's worried is his concern centers on the tortured miscalculations of David Cameron and the other architects of the European Union. Because remember, the British ran. They didn't stick around for this fight. They decided to drop out. That history is important. And although it was very easy for him to become president of France, the energy and ideas that he brought to winning this election aren't enough to, I guess you could say, puncture the European bloat that actually exists. Donald Trump says, for instance, he wants to drain a swamp. Well, Emmanuel Macron is looking to drain Brussels, and one wonders if that's possible.
No, one wonders indeed. But greater integration has always been the goal of the European project. But that's going to cost money. That's always going to cost money. Are taxpayers going to be willing to stump up the cash?
Well, Macron said we are ready to pay more for this integration, but, you know, Frau Merkel isn't, certainly the German industry isn't, German politicians aren't, because when you start paying more, as the UK pointed out, you can hear that sucking sound of that cash going into southern Europe. So the Germans don't want to see it, and quite frankly, there's a lot of people in France who don't want to see any more of their money going into this European experiment, nightmare, whatever you want to call it, depending on your political proclivity.
Yeah, I mean, the counter-argument to that, of course, is that the UK got far more out of the European Union than it put in so many ways. But let's leave that aside for a moment. But what happens if Macron fails to reform the EU as he wants? I mean, what if, as you say, this generation of sleepwalkers, as he calls them, what if they fail to wake up?
Well, the Banshee of France reappears. Marine Le Pen, you know, she's lurking in the background here like an evil spirit. Macron is very concerned about the right wing. He was very upset with Frau Merkel and the rest of the EU for not condemning Viktor Orbán in his recent victory in the Hungarian elections. Macron is fearful of this. He sees that a failure for Europe to integrate more fully is going to cause a collapse of Europe. I mean, there's two interesting things of many. Number one, he tried to create a pan-European party along the line of his La Républicains En Marche party. That's not going to work. The other thing the French are calling for, as remarkable as this might sound to many of our viewers, as our his government is calling for an Islamic reformation. And as my understanding of the religion is, reformations are heretical. So he's calling for this. The French government's trying to push this, and that's going to cause another problem. So his attempts to push for a more integrated secular Europe, we'll see if he has the energy to pull it off.
Interesting times. Craig Copetas in Paris. Thank you.